From managing boxing champions in the ring to meeting with presidents and popes, movie stars, and moguls, Rock Newman is one of DC's biggest heavyweights, and he's with us today. Washington Full Circle starts right now. Welcome to Washington Full Circle. I'm Furman Patterson. Jet magazine once dubbed Rock Newman a Renaissance man. That's because he's done so many things so well. He's managed heavyweight champions like Riddick Bowe, ruled the airwaves with a top-rated radio talk show, fought against apartheid in South Africa, and raised relief funds for Somalian refugees. You've done an awful lot. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be home.
Now, tell us one thing. You have this link with radio. You started off doing radio years and years ago, and you're back at it.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was when Dewey and Kathy Hughes first bought WOL, which became the conglomerate Radio One. And they were really looking for people to kind of fill space on air. And I happened to be one of those guys crazy enough to think I could do something I had never done before. I went and tried it, and we had a lot of fun. And I knew at the time that it was leading me somewhere. Mm-hmm. I didn't know, but we kept the faith, and we've been blessed.
Yeah, and blessed enough to be one of the top-rated radio stations in the area at one time.
Well, you know, I had a talk show. I ended up doing a sports show, and for 7 straight months, 7 days a week, I was on every single day.
Wow.
And doing that and bringing on some sort of top-notch guests from the world of sports from all around the world, we did have some fans who were loyal, and I think one might say we became popular at one point.
One of the other things too is, I've been talking about it, is the boxing world.
Yeah.
You managed Riddick Bowe and took him to greatness, but you also sort of was a trailblazer in that area. Tell us about that success.
Actually, radio was a platform that allowed me to get into boxing the way that I wanted to initially. I started covering Sugar Ray Leonard fights. I started doing a round-by-round broadcast, and then I did a couple of blow-by-blow broadcasts. Got to know the boxing world, and I had always loved it. Muhammad Ali was my greatest inspiration. And I really wanted to get involved in a business capacity, and I was able to do that. You know, we learned the ropes, and worked with some really great guys. And in terms of the historical part of it and the social activist part of it, when Riddick Bowe became the heavyweight champion of the world, and even before, we took on the cause of apartheid in a very big way. He went in the ring a couple of times with the colors of the ANC.
Did he?
We had signs that said "One man, one vote, repudiate the regime." And as a result of that, when he became champion, the first international trip that we took was to South Africa, and we were so totally blessed by being able to meet and spend time over the course of 3 days with Nelson Mandela, one of the great experiences of my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a great man.
Yeah.
And back then there weren't a lot of people speaking out against apartheid, but there were people like you and some other, Marion Barry, back then.
Well, you know what? That was 1992 when I did that. Back in 1979, I think Carter was still in the White House. A representative from the South African government came to Washington, D.C. and was going to meet at the White House. And I remember being down there, going down with Dick Gregory and Walter Fauntroy, and we all got arrested. And the plan was for all of us to get arrested, go there, get processed, and get right out.
Right.
But man, I had some parking tickets. And at the time, they had warrants out for when you had parking tickets. So I ended up spending the night eating a bologna and jelly sandwich at the DC jail.
That was not what you planned.
We were involved in the cause of apartheid long before it got popular.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've also been a a person that gives back to the community. Like I mentioned earlier, Somalia, relief funds for raising funds for
You
those.
know what? Two of the greatest experiences of my life happened in Africa. One was, as I said earlier, meeting Nelson Mandela. You know, they talk about a person filling up the room. I never knew what that meant.
Yeah.
Except for when we were all in our African, garb, and he walked in a pair of jeans and a Serafina t-shirt. And to spend time with him over the course of 3 days was as I said, one of the great moments of my life. In Somalia, we were able to facilitate and support and to bring in nearly $2 million worth of food and medical supplies.
That's a lot of fundraising.
And we took it and we went straight to the villages. And in one of those villages, man, I held a kid that I didn't think was going to make it. But I had a sense that we had done everything that we could do to try to help. And that's satisfying in its own way. So my experiences in Africa have been extraordinarily special to me.
And it's also been special to your fans. You can't walk down the street with someone going, "Hey, Rock."
I'm always surprised about that because, I moved to Las Vegas in 2000 and, I was away for about 13 years, and I come back and it's almost as if I never left in terms of familiarity. So I guess people see this old mug. How could you forget this messed up face?
There's so much to talk about. Stick around. Don't go away. We'll be back with more of our special guest, the Renaissance man himself, Rock Newman, right after this. And welcome back to Washington Full Circle, and our special guest today, Rock Newman. We have a lot of things in common. You went to Howard University.
Yes.
I went to Howard. I think you come from a large family. I come from a family of 8.
That's me, 8, family of 8. That's right.
And I've read that your mom was very proud. You wanted to make her proud of you. And my mom passed away, but that was one of the things that was important to me, to make her proud.
Yeah.
But tell us about coming from such a large family.
Well, I was the baby of 8, as they say. And my mother reminded me from time to time, especially when I was misbehaving, that I was a mistake. And later on, when we had some success, she says, "Well, if I'd known this was going to happen, I probably had you earlier." But it was a big family, and we were competitive. We always played sports, and it really helped to fashion a sense of. My mother was a very religious woman, and she's very concerned about doing right by everybody,
Mm-hmm.
So my mother, unquestionably, when she was alive and since, has always been a moral compass. If I'm acting a little crazy, it's like she still got that hook kind of bringing me back, So her influence remains until this day.
Yeah. Now at Howard, after you came away from there, you came back, I believe, as a counselor. Was that it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something. Mm-hmm. I spent 5 years at Howard University, and it was the lowest paying job I ever had, but it was perhaps as rewarding as anything I've done in my life as a counselor in the dorm, being on the first line of defense for kids who might have had problems, whether they were personal, whether they were academic, roommates, problems with their parents, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Having that kind of connection was really, really special. And today, from all around the world, I still hear from the students that I counseled back in the late 70s and early 80s, yeah.
That's amazing. You make quite the impression.
Very rewarding. Yeah.
But back at Howard, it's unusual. It wasn't boxing sport that you were involved in. It was baseball?
Yeah. I played baseball. As I said, big family. I had 5 brothers and 2 sisters. And when I was 4 or 5 years old, and they were 12, 13, 14 years old. They were treating me like I was 13 and 14 years old, so I wasn't anything easy, so I learned to excel at a very early age and was absolutely blessed. When I came out of high school, I got a full scholarship to Howard University. Dr. Arnold W. McKnight saw me playing one day and decided that I was somebody that he wanted to be on the team. So I captained the team at Howard for 3 of the 4 years that I was there. As far as I know, I'm still the all-time career. I hold an all-time career batting average, 371, 372. And we had a lot of fun, man. And Howard University, oh my God, it lent so much to my life and helped shape. A little country boy came up to Washington, D.C., and it was like I was at the United Nations. Man. It was a great experience.
Yeah. I also read something about you. It was an experience you had as a kid at a barbershop. That's something that seemed to have stuck with you.
Being a very light-skinned person, mistaken oftentimes for being white.
Right.
When I was around some white folks who weren't so enlightened, I would hear the worst and the rawest of their racist attitudes and behaviors, And this one day it was nothing more important to me when I was 13 years old than looking good in my baseball uniform. And I put my uniform on, man, and put my cap on, and my cap didn't fit because I had a big curly Angela Davis trying to pick out afro. So, man, there was a barber shop right across the street from the high school where junior high school where I was. And so I ran over there at lunchtime instead of eating, get all my hair cut off so I could look good with my baseball cap on. And the guy started asking me my name, asked me where I live, and by telling him my name and where I live, he figured out that I was a black guy, I wasn't a white guy. And he put a razor under my throat, man, and said, nigga, if you ever come in here again, this is what I'm gonna cut, it's gonna be your throat. And,
amazing.
That was a very stinging experience,
Especially for a youngster.
Yeah, there was enough devil in me. I mean, I tried to be all right, but there was enough devil in me that 3 sides of his barbershop were glass. And some friends and he had a gravel driveway. That's a bad mixture. And so we went out about a week or so later at night and got some revenge. Don't tell my mom.
Well, we can put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
That's really terrible to hear that. A young kid has to hear that.
It is that someone would do that. That was in probably 1966, 1965. That was 1965. In 2015. 50 years later, to see some of the raw racism that is emerging, especially after Obama became the president, and you're looking at the front-running Republican Donald Trump today, spewing some of his racist, bigoted venom, and lots of people supporting him. We've still got a long ways to go in this country.
That's one of the things that on your radio show, you talk about real issues, raw issues, and there's a good response to it. Your fans have seemed to increase.
Man, my mother always told me I talk too much. You're gonna get in trouble. But from a very early age, growing up in an area and seeing some of the naked racism that I saw, I was always prone to calling it out, and I think for something in me when I was young and something in me now that I'm a little bit older, just demands that I address these issues in a truthful, courageous, fearless, I would say, kind of way, and let the chips fall where they will. I mean, much too often we speak about the issue of race and they say, when are you going to leave that alone? Well, we can leave that alone when it stopped being practiced. But until that time, we're going to keep on challenging it.
Well put. Stay with us. Washington Full Circle will be back in a moment with our special guest, Rock Newman. Welcome back. Special guest Rock Newman is with us today on Washington Full Circle. Today we hear a lot about guns and violence. And years ago, you made an effort to get guns off the street. Tell us about that.
I had noticed that a couple of initiatives had unfolded where people were allowing residents from the surrounding area to get some tennis shoes or something for turning in guns. Mm-hmm. And Washington, D.C. had become the murder capital in the country like 3 or 4 years standing. And I just wondered, what we could do. So we said, hey, you know what we'll do? We will pay $100 per gun that is turned in. And we really put some conditions on that said to those who have the guns that will step forth and turn them in, we're not going to do anything. I made a deal with the police department that we're not going to trace any of these guns. If people are turning these guns in, it needs to be like a crime. It needs to be a zone where they don't get, then there are repercussions, legal repercussions. So we worked that out. And I'm in my own mind, I was thinking, man, if we could get 500 guns, that would be a really big success. And my wife reminded me, well, if we get 500 guns, that's going to be $50,000. I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna stand in the gap here and see what we can do, And so we put this thing together and advertised. And I woke up early on the morning that we did it. And I was like, oh God, we may not get 50 people because it was 3 or 4 degrees. And it was already snow on the ground, and it was snowing. We were doing this at Union Temple Baptist Church in Southeast. I drove over there thinking, man, this is going to be a disaster. When I turned the corner off of Martin Luther King onto R Street, there were people wrapped around the church.
What?
I was like, oh my God, here we go. Within the first hour, we collected over 500 guns and went through the $50,000 cash we had. Literally, a SWAT team took my wife down to the bank, and we got another $100,000. There were so many people standing out there, we knew it was going to be that many.
Right.
At the end of the day, that $100,000 ran out, and now the banks had closed. We had to start writing checks, and we took in over 3,000 guns that day. Now, I've never claimed that this was the reason for the lowering of homicides after that. But 6 to 8 weeks leading into almost 3 months after that, the homicide rate dropped dramatically. And we were given some we were given some credit for having an impact, and it was an effort that was, we spent a lot of money, but maybe we saved a life or two, and I never had any regrets about it.
Put 2 and 2 together again.
Yeah.
People say that you can easily talk with presidents and popes and the everyday man. What do you think what makes your gift for talking to people? What's behind that?
Oh man, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say fully appreciating and understanding that I have been blessed so beyond what I am worthy of, if you will. Again, I come from a poor family, a humble family out in Brandywine, Maryland. People didn't necessarily go to college, and we were truck drivers, and kind of ate off the land a little bit, and I was infused by God with a vision to want something more. And anything that I've done that has any kind of significance has often happened not because of any particular brilliance that I have, but because I've been blessed. And I understand where that blessing comes from. And I look at people who think, as my mama used to say, they so such a much. And, they get arrogant and all of that. And they, can talk with the potentates, but they can't talk with the folks on the street. And I just think that's a shame, and they don't understand what this game of life is really all about. So, I can tell you one thing, however much I might reach for the stars and grab one every now and then, my feet are firmly planted on the ground.
Where does that expression, what do you care about, come about?
When we first launched the radio show and the live streaming portion, part of what I wanted to do was to change in my little slice of the world, to change the narrative about how our community was viewed. I had a friend who had gone to China. He was in love with a girl from the University of Maryland who was Chinese, and he was a very dark-skinned brother. And he's a very optimistic and positive person. And he called me one day, we talked, we communicated, and he was very depressed. I'm like, what's up? And he said, man, when we go into a restaurant, they don't let us come in together. They'll tell us that the tables are full, and we're looking at 12 tables that are empty. And I walk down the side of the street, people are spitting on the sidewalk and going to the other side. And that's because the imagery of the African American, especially the African American male, has been so polluted and exported in a way that there's a lack of respect for who we are. And I wanted to step in a space and help change that narrative. So I would ask the question, what's important to you? What do you want to talk about? There were certain things that I knew that I wanted to do, but I really wanted to give my listening and viewing audience an opportunity to be heard in a meaningful way. And if I could provide that platform, then once again, I think, I'm headed in the right direction.
Well, keep doing it. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, man. I love this.
Right.
Okay.
That's it for Washington Full Circle. Thanks to Rock Newman, and thanks to you at home for watching. We'll see you again next time.